Nick Caley spoke to the media today, and I'm growing increasingly impressed with Nick Caley. And part of it's for my own ego's sake, just because he's delivering on a promise, or at least a theory that I have long had, as well as many others, that, man, it's not on the offensive line always about how many studs do you have. It's can you get them to play together? And that this year's Texans offensive line could be better than last year's, despite the loss of Laramie Tunsil, despite the loss of whomever else. I mean, it's hard for me to get worked up over Shaq Mason or Kenyon Green being gone, but that just by doing things fundamentally sound and then doing them with an element of physicality, they could be a much improved offensive line this year. How good could they be? I don't know. We got to wait and see. But definitely improved over last year. Got a couple plays I want to show you, and also just Nick Caley in his press conference today. He was asked about the importance of physicality on the offensive line.
Look, I don't believe in being anything other than the most physical team we can possibly be. I think it allows you to control the line of scrimmage. It carves out, actually takes a 2 or 3 yard gain in the run game to a 4 or 5 or 6 yard gain. It wears on people in the fourth quarter, and it's a matter of mental and physical conditioning for us just to continue to push through that. But yeah, I believe in a physical football team, and I think our guys have answered the bell, and they're working to be the most physical version of themselves every single day.
So I like the most physical version of themselves, as opposed to just guys trying to be the best player they can be. That's a little bit of a tweak on an old common theme. I gotta be sure my computer's plugged in here. Hold tight. There we go. Tragedy averted. Just to show you one play from the game that I really, really liked, and I think I showed this on the live stream the other night, but very quickly. This is how you can actually have positive run plays when everybody's doing the right thing, even if everybody else doesn't necessarily. Not all 5 guys need to have dominating blocks, but Nick Chubb ends up getting 7 yards on this, and I want you to watch Blake Fisher, because he doesn't have a bad rep on this. He's got the hardest assignment on the offensive line right here. He's head up on that defensive end. That defensive end is playing to his right. It's a 4-eye technique. He's going to be responsible for that gap right there. This is the hardest block that any of these guys on the offensive line have, and as you go through, you can see he takes a step, and he's trying to seal that guy off. I'm going to show Cade Stover and Ed Ingram in a minute, but first, just watch that. So eventually 94 A'Shawn Robinson comes off, but he doesn't get a clean separation, so he has to try to arm tackle Nick Chubb, and then Nick Chubb, with his strength, drives forward, and because those other guys, if we look at Cade Stover right there to the left, when he starts off, he takes his initial step, takes a jab step in to give Dalton Schultz a little bit of help. Dalton Schultz whips his hips around, and then Cade Stover works up to the second level. So if you go to your right, we're going to watch Ed Ingram now. Ed Ingram, same thing, all right? Slaps down, gets him in the kidneys, knocks 99 over, so Jake Andrews has him. Then he works up to a backer. And then you've got Blake Fisher there on number 94 having the toughest assignment, but does a good enough job that you get a 7-yard run. Like that's a good run and on any day of the week. And the footwork, the soundness, you cannot know anything about offensive line play, but watch that play versus any random play in the run game last year, and you can tell that everybody is moving in unison. Their footwork is all moving at the same time and in the right direction. So it's the simple fundamental stuff, and then with an added element of, man, they've been drilling it into these guys' heads. You got to be physical. You got to be physical. You got to be tough. All of that. And I think Nick Caley, that's been his message from the beginning. I've loved his message from the beginning, but now we're starting to see the fruits of the labors. And as frustrating as it was for the first 2 or 3 weeks of camp, where the O-line was genuinely struggling, in the run game and in the pass game, but when they can go out and they can play tackle football and actually drive guys to the ground and get them out of there, it's a much different type of offensive line than it was last year. Here is Nick Caley on Nick Chubb himself.
He's as consistent of a human being in terms of his approach, and I feel like he's continuing to get better and better and better. And we only had him for a short time in the spring. We got him here in training camp, and he's continued to grow every single day that he's been out here. He's a really patient runner, has a good feel for pressing landmarks and tracks, and he's just got a really good instinct about running the football.
So the thing about Chubb there is they said that he's continued to improve. I don't think he's needed to improve in running the scheme or anything. The scheme's been relatively simple so far in a good way in terms of just the variety and the number of plays. They're keeping it relatively simple, and they just want to nail it and get that part down, and then maybe add as they continue to hopefully prove that they can handle it. But Chubb's improvement, I'm going to take it to mean that physically he's improved. Because right now where he is, I think he can churn out yardage. I think everything you saw right there, if the blocking is good in front of him, he's still got the strength to break tackles and to bulldoze forward, run behind his pads, all those things. That extra burst to get back to somewhere kind of like what he used to be, where he's shot out of a cannon at times, where he could break down guys in the open field. I actually saw he had a nice cut on one of those plays in the backfield from last week, which I think maybe looked a little bit better than he did from what we saw early in camp. So that's going to keep getting better as long as he can stay healthy. I feel good about that. I feel great about Nick Chubb. I want to show a clip. Since we're talking about the offense, I don't want to just fixate completely on the offensive line or the running game, but the passing game. CJ confessed that he screwed up on that throw to Nico Collins, but I know that there have been questions about just how accurate he's been. I've had questions myself about, all right, is it just that he's not quite as accurate this training camp, or is it because everybody's on a little different of a page? This is from the Bleav In Texans podcast. I'll put links to the podcast below so you guys can subscribe to that. Cecil Shorts and I do it twice a week, but this is Cecil explaining what he thinks happened on that. Remember the out that Higgins caught, but he had to dive for it? This is Cecil explaining what happened on that play.
I thought the reason he had to dive is he took a little bit too long in the route.
Hold on. He did that little hezzy step, didn't he?
He did that hezzy step, which was beautiful. It's fun to see. But when you have a speed out, you got to get out because the quarterback's throwing to a spot. Mm-hmm. And he has to throw the ball towards the sideline, because if it's the inside, it's an interception or knockdown, right? So he's throwing towards a spot on the sideline, and he took a little bit long to get there, but that'll get better with time. Like you mentioned, him and Tank had that down. Yeah. 2-minute drill, whatever it was, 10-yard out, 15-yard out, it was money. They just need to get that timing down, but he took a little bit wrong on route with the hezzy, but his route was beautiful.
And now I'm having memories of Jaden Higgins when he was talking about, it was one of the receivers that he liked to watch, and I'm blanking on who it is, but it's somebody who's a little bit unorthodox in his route running. It's a good example there of how sometimes the guys are a little bit unorthodox in their route running. There's a give and a take there as to how much it actually helps the offense, especially when you really want the timing and the rhythm. And it's just something as minor as that, there's the little hesitation. Yeah, it disrupts the timing, and it's that extra 6 inches, or maybe he could have not had to lay it out for that and could have gotten run after the catch, which I'm totally cool with. The big thing there for a rookie, you saw the separation. I mean, that was beautiful. He had all the room in the world to where CJ could be inaccurate if he had to be. But I think going back to training camp, I think there have been a lot of times where it may have looked like an errant CJ Stroud throw, but it might very well be just everybody else, including the receivers and anybody else, getting not just the rookies, but all the receivers, getting a feel for exactly how Nick Caley wants to operate. Remember, in the first preseason game, Davis Mills looked like he had overthrown Cade Stover, but it was most likely that Cade Stover was just a little too narrow down the hashes on that route. So another reason that I feel good about Nick Caley. Another one from Nick Caley. It's too many Nicks now. Nick Caley, Nick Chubb, Nick Caserio. Talked to Nick Caserio today. We had a delightful chat. This is Nick Caley on, I think Landry asked him about, like, how do you choose, which running backs you're going to use, running back by committee, et cetera, et cetera.
We have a very versatile group of guys as it is right now, as you guys can see. So I think that's a week-to-week deal, a field deal, but we have a lot of trust in whoever's out there. I think you see with that group, they've taken care of the football in their opportunities. They've been stout in blitz pickup. I've been very impressed with that group in terms of how they fit the window, get pads under pads, protect inside out. The things, the core axioms that we're asking, they've showcased, and I think that they understand the intent of what we're doing. So I've been happy with all of them.
And I'll say this again and again. The fact that the fact that these young running backs, and J.J. Taylor is not here. J.J. Taylor's not young, by the way. I'm guilty of constantly thinking of him as like, oh, it's a second-year guy, right? No, he came in 2020, but he's small, so you tend to think of him as younger. But Woody Marks especially. Look, Woody Marks played in air raid systems in college, and they pass a lot. He's got a lot of experience pass protecting, and I think that's one of the reasons that they liked him. I didn't expect him to be this good in pass protection because it's not just the knowledgeable part, him picking things up and handling the blitz, and sometimes in some pretty tough circumstances, but it's his physicality too. I mean, he might be 205 pounds, undersized, whatever. Maybe he'll never be a 3-down back or a workhorse back. But, man, I don't worry about his size other than how it might relate to durability. And I think they'll find ways to get him on the field very, very quickly. One more from Nick Caley. He was asked a couple of questions about calling the plays from the booth or the sideline, and I know a lot of you already know what his answer was, but here's Nick Caley on where he's going to call the games from this year.
Yeah, I'll be down on the field. Feel good about it. Feel good about both, but I'll be down on the field moving forward. No, communication's good either way. I just like, I like to be able to look guys in the eyes and be able to walk over immediately and talk to guys, make adjustments with the coaches, and be able to look guys in the eyes when I communicate with them. Just a little bit more efficient, and, I can cut a few steps out that way.
Yeah, I think a personality and the relationship with the quarterback and everybody else matters. And I think with Nick Caley, he very much has the feel of a hands-on guy, does he not? I mean, this is a guy that really wants to be able to look you in the face. Partly because when you listen to somebody talk that fast and you can't see their mouth moving, it's hard to understand them. So with his energy, I could see why he would prefer that. I like the idea of a guy being a chess master up from above and being able to see things that not everybody else can see. And I think it was him that had mentioned, it is nice to be able to kind of have all your work laid out and be able to stay organized. But I think about just defensive coordinators that had played for in the past. Vic Fangio is not quite the same people person that Nick Caley is, and for him, it might have been better up in the booth. I think it'll serve Nick Caley well to be down on the field. So I think that was it for stuff from Nick Caley. He said some really nice things about Jakob Johnson. Just one more preseason game, and then it is on. I'm a little bit. I feel like I want to see C.J. Stroud a little bit more than I should, but this is when I'm reminded. Yeah, they've got the joint practice versus Detroit, and I'm excited that they're going to get that experience. We talked to Casario about that this morning, and it's not just being able to control the reps that you get. So in those joint practices, you get to go against their starters in red zone, 2-minute, all the situations that you want, but also I never, and I think this varies between different teams probably when they work together. But Nick was talking about how guys will talk to the opposing coordinator and say, hey, we'd like to actually see this look at something we've been working on or struggling with. And there's just no way you can do that in a preseason game. Everything's just way too random. So I like that a lot. So whatever Nick Caley feels that C.J. Stroud might want to get a few extra looks at, or make a wrinkle in the coverage or something in the way they can disguise coverages, that you can put CJ into those situations versus starters and get that working. And maybe we'll see. The offensive line was shuffled around again today. My gut at this point just tells me it's going to be Ursary at left tackle. I've been really impressed with him, and he's going to continue to get better. I don't regret that they signed Cam Robinson. Remember, you signed Cam Robinson before the draft. At that point, you don't know where you're going to be drafting, who you're going to be drafting, if an offensive tackle you like is even going to be there. And even if you do draft an offensive tackle, you don't know for sure that he's going to be ready right away. Dwayne Brown, it took 3 years. So, and then you still do have the little injuries that happen here and there. So I'm cool with signing Cam Robinson to a 1-year deal. It made sense then. It still makes sense now. You're purchasing an insurance policy. Even if you're planning on addressing offensive tackle in the draft, you just flat out don't know how it's going to work. So I think it'll be Ursary at left. I think it'll be Laken Tomlinson, then Jake Andrews. And I think Ed Ingram has played really well for 2 straight games now, which frees them up to have Titus Howard at right tackle. And then you've got Cam Robinson as a swing tackle. And Blake Fisher, I showed that play. I'll just play it one more time Blake Fisher showed marked improvement over his first couple of weeks of camp. And this is something that, I've said if I go out and watch this game and I knew nothing about the Texans, I only knew that this guy, the circled one right there, was a second-year offensive tackle who is considered a developmental project. He's got the hardest block on this play. He's just got a head-up base block, and he's got to try to take a big, brawny 3-4 defensive end and just and try to keep him from, ignore those circles, making that tackle. He forces an arm tackle, but because everybody else is doing the things they're supposed to do, this is just exactly what we've talked about all offseason. You don't have to have perfect blocking on every single play. You've just got everybody doing the right thing. There was nobody standing around wondering who they were supposed to block. I know that shouldn't be I know that shouldn't be a huge revelation, but I feel like you weren't paying attention last year if you don't realize why that's a huge revelation. It was miserable. Took years off my football life. I never agreed to be born a Texans fan. That's what I was thinking last year. Just bemoaning my lot in life. Everybody have a great day.